I'll just get into chapter 9, which anyone that knows me well. Like, this is like one of my mantras in the world, and it's about time management. And some the questions I oftentimes get from people is, how in the heck do you do what you do? You teach a class, you manage Bigby, you have 4 kids, you write books, right? So, and this chapter 9, I think in so many ways explains how I approach the world from a time perspective. But one of the things about time management is we have become like crazy more efficient in the last 30, 20, 15, 10 years, right? Like think of back in the day, if you wanted to get something reviewed and signed, I mean, you'd have to like print hard copies and put it in an envelope and send it across the country and wait 2 weeks for it to be reviewed and sent back to you. And now, like, that same process could take 2 hours in one morning, right? With DocuSign and so on. But like, we've had crazy amounts of efficiency, and that should be freeing up more time, right? It is freeing up more time. There's no doubt about it. But what's the point of it? And to me, one of the major premises of this chapter is the title is Check More Boxes or Be a Better Human. and like, so what happens with all this new time? Well, what feels to me is we just cram more into our day, and we all look at the end of the day hoping we have one more half hour or one more hour to just check a few more boxes. And to me, that's not the point. The point in having more time is to be more effective, healthier, get more work done in a shorter period of time, and do better quality work. But I think the piece of that I want to emphasize is the be healthier piece. And I don't think that in our efficient ways of being today in the world, with all the efficiency we have, I don't feel like it's leading to people being healthier. And I have a dear friend of mine who runs a company, and I've become I know him very, very well. So I know sort of the inner workings of his approach, right? And he makes the self-care moments in his day absolutely sacrosanct, like the most important things in his day. And so an exercise, reading time, he does a lot of self work and so on. And his point is that makes him more effective, and it makes him a better leader. It makes him, a better partner to his teams, and so on and so forth. And so I think we need to be thinking about prioritizing this newfound efficiency with the things that will make us healthier and more effective. And I know when I say that, many of you, maybe most of you, are rolling your eyes going, dude, I can't even find my pencil in the morning because I've got so much shit to do, and I'm so, overwhelmed and so on, right? Like, I get it. I live that way at times too, but I also work very, very hard to try to prioritize the things in my day that I think are most important, most effective. There's also a story I have that a friend of mine, his nephew, who I've become friends with, is an NFL wide receiver. And when he left, he played football at Stanford, and he now plays for the Cincinnati Bengals. And when he left Stanford, at Stanford, he had 2 full-time jobs, right? He was a full-time student and he was a football player, right? So he had 2 full-time jobs. He had not 1 minute to spare in his day. Then he moves on into the professional ranks and he becomes an NFL football player. And like, the football team maxes his day out at maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. And so now all of a sudden he's got all this newfound time, right? Like, he doesn't know what to do with it all. And I ended up having conversations with him. I included Shanna Novacell down in Cincinnati in terms of like, what could we find for him to do? Like, how could he contribute to the community and be better, and better use his time and so on. But my point in that whole story is that if NFL football teams thought that grinding away on their players 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a day would make them more effective. And don't you think they would be doing it? Like, of course they would be doing it, right? Like, and so, to me, that's a good case in point that we need to be very thoughtful about our effort, very thoughtful about when we apply ourselves. And that leads me to my next point in the chapter, which is, to me, it's about knowing when to throttle up and when to throttle down, if that makes sense. So if you're always running at 6,000 RPMs and then a crisis occurs or something happens, you don't have the ability to throttle up, right? And so to me, when to be most effective, we need to be able to throttle up in moments in time. And I talk about, there are times you got to jump into the deep end of the pool and do the doggy paddle as hard as you can to try to get across the pool and survive, right? Like, we know that moment. But then there's also times that you have to roll over and float on your back and look at the clouds, right? And I know this is probably ringing difficult for many in the organization. I'm giving you the theory, right? I'm giving you the way ultimately at the end of the day, I think that it should be for most of us, if not all of us. And we can aspire to that and we can work towards that. And I'm not saying we're going to work 4-hour days like NFL football players, but I think the theory and the concept of how the football teams approach their players, I think is telling. I think it's telling. And then there's, I won't go into it now, but there's in the chapter, there's 6 different tips in terms of managing time. I won't dive into each one. They're in there if you care to read them. And so I'll just leave you with this, and that is, I've never been a workaholic. If you know me, know my intimate day-to-day life, I'm not a workaholic. I work very hard at certain moments in time in the areas that I need to in order to be effective. And any opportunity I get to talk in front of entrepreneurs or other business leaders, I always try to land this point somewhere in my talk, which is, I've never believed in being a workaholic. And if it was going to take that in order for me to be successful in my business and be a successful entrepreneur, I didn't want the business and I didn't want to be a successful entrepreneur. Because at the end of the day, the business is only part of me. It's only part of my life. And I have so many other things that I love and that I'm passionate about. And so that's why I've always tried to be very, very balanced in terms of how I approach work and how I approach the business and so on. So I will leave you with that. That's my summary of chapter 9. And thank you for the opportunity.